just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood! When you're terrific, if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be gone or luck. Hooray for Hollywood!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And now, here's your host, Robert Winfree. What a wonderful phrase. Robert Winfree ain't no passing craze. He means no worries. For the rest of your days, it's a problem-free philosophy. Robert Winfree. Yay!
Wow. You know, I have a straight razor sitting right next to me, and I've never been more tempted to reach for it.
I'm just laughing how you kind of went from Timon to Kermit the Frog at the end.
Yeah.
So, on the way back from Walmart, first of all, in the middle of Walmart, I broke into an impromptu version of Yakety Yak because that's how I parent. And
Talk back.
That's right. I told them, don't talk back. As I was trying to usher them out of... Children have no body awareness, by the way, at 8 and 5 years old. So I'm trying to usher them out of Walmart with minimal impact on everyone else shopping. So I started singing Yakety Sax at them, which then made me decide to play it in the car, which then led to Surfin' Bird, and and which then led to These Boots Are Made for Walking. Anyway, the whole time I'm in the car, just doing the swim and doing the mashed potato, all while my wife is trying to drive, and it was a very Oliver and Hardy type moment. And my wife just looked at me and she was like, "For fuck's sake, I married a Muppet." Hakuna Matata. Yay! All right, you're up, pal.
All right, with that bit of... I don't even know what that was, out of the way.
That was look, what I had in mind initially was to introduce you to the theme of Girls by Beastie Boys, but I was afraid, since you're culturally anachronistic, that you wouldn't know the song, so I was like, screw
I know
it.
that song.
So I said, screw it, I'll just go with Hakuna Matata by the Lion King, and I think it worked out. Don't you think so, Alexis Hejna from Honeysuckle Rose Creations?
I'm just loving that phrase, culturally anesthetic. That's really good. I like that.
Thank you.
It's true. I am deeply anachronistic relative to contemporary pop culture. I hate it. But no, I have heard the Beastie Boys song on occasion. I don't know that I would have recognized it immediately from you doing it, but I do know the song.
I'll keep that in mind.
All right, anyway, nonsense aside, but what are we without nonsense? Because really, that's what you tune in for. Tonight on Damn You Hollywood, we will be reviewing the latest Disney remake, and I can't call this one live action because it's pretty much 100% CGI. But
some of the landscapes were real.
I assume so. It's because it's stupidly expensive if they had to actually do the entire thing. But we'll be reviewing The Lion King, and oh boy. Mark, I want to start with you before we get into the plot of this movie, because there's issues with this movie. I think even people who like it will agree with that sentiment. And I do want to talk very briefly about the Disney remake trend more generally.
Okay.
And again, I want to be rather brief with this because we could do a whole show on this and never mention the actual movie, and then people will complain at us for not actually doing our jobs. Mostly you complaining at me because no one else cares. But I want to save myself the aggravation. So I think that the best instances of these remakes have been the times when the remake has actually brought something new or fleshed out. It's brought something else to the table. It's fleshed out some characters. It's taken a slightly different twist on things, whatever it happens to be. Now, I think the two best instances of this, and the only ones off the top of my head that I could think of, are Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, both of which flesh out the world that they're in. They give...
Maleficent did the the bad guy is really the good guy twist. So at least they brought something new to the tale of Sleeping Beauty.
And Alice in Wonderland was a totally new story. God help me, I'm defending Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, I don't consider Alice in Wonderland all that defensible, but I appreciate. But the point is valid. It's essentially a retelling of the similar story, but it's also very much a Burton story rather than Lewis Carroll's.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true of all Tim Burton movies when he's supposed to adapt something. Looking at you, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
You are the only person I have ever heard say that.
I'm a diehard Roald Dahl fan, so of course I like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
All right, you were getting somewhere.
Anyway.
Get there.
Yeah, again, I think the best ones are the ones that are able to bring something to the table and have it fully realized. So again, giving Cate Blanchett a few subtle scenes to express some of her issues, some of the emotional issues she has with Cinderella and with her man she marries, and again fleshing out the character a little bit so she's not just
another
typical
example, giving Gaston a backstory beyond what they sang and no one spits like Gaston or whatever the hell the name of the song is.
It's just fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's just giving him a backstory. I stand by this, and I know people who vehemently disagree with me, but this is my show, so suck it. I actually stand by the fact that I think the love story between Belle and the Beast in the live-action, more or less, remake is much better than the mostly Stockholm Syndrome kind of thing they have going on in the animated version.
I don't remember enough of there being a difference. Honestly, the only thing I remember about Beauty and the Beast being tremendously different, I think they fleshed out Belle a little bit more than they did in the cartoon.
They talked about her again. There's a bit where they go look through some of her memories. They do more things together, and they bounce off each other a little bit more. There's actually a great scene where Beast takes the appropriate position that Romeo and Juliet is not a very good play.
And then, of course,
Belle is mortified by this and does the pearl clutching thing, and he just goes, "No, really, it's not even close to the best of his works. Here, let me show you." And he takes her. That's what leads to him taking her to the library.
Right. The aforementioned.
We're also forgetting about. We're also forgetting about the Jungle Book, which probably took the most liberties from the original.
Well, it also Jungle Book's weird because while it takes the most liberties from the original material, it also is more true to the source material.
What do you call it? Christopher Robin's was an entirely new story.
Yeah,
I really did enjoy that film.
So did I in a lot of ways.
And we were the only three people who saw it. Pete's Dragon was an updated version of the same story. I mean, it's other than the fact that there's a cartoon dragon in it, it's an entirely different movie. We don't need to get into the merits of it. I'm just saying, for the purpose of this discussion, because I know where you're going with this. Up to this point, because even Aladdin
had a little. Again, they tweaked the genie a little bit. They gave Jafar an actual character. Issues with the acting aside,
I was going to just settle on they gave Jasmine, a female forward character as opposed to damsel in distress.
We discussed that in our Aladdin review, plug, and I made some pretty good points about why they actually probably took a few steps back with her character.
I would agree with that.
Again, what Robert's pointing out is, just so we can move this on, is up to this point, most of the Disney films have brought something new, the Disney remakes have brought something new, updated, tweaked, fleshed out, done something to merit the recreation of this cartoon product, and then The Lion King happened. Go on.
That's kind of that is where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Because, and again, we can argue about the merits of Pete's Dragon. It sucks, both versions. We can argue about Dumbo sucking. I mean, and again, Dumbo was just every time you hire Tim Burton, you got to know it ain't going to be good. The question is whether or not it appeals to enough people, but Burton's made like 2 good movies.
They at least tried with Dumbo.
I'm not even giving them that credit.
Okay, but
I don't think they knew what they were doing with Dumbo. But,
so moving the goalpost forward.
But Dumbo and Pete's Dragon are good examples because they're instances of not really knowing what you're doing with the property. And that's not to say you're incompetent, but just not really having a clear direction for what you want to do. Whereas the successful ones, and not just financially, but I think even the artistically successful ones, go out of their way to bring something new. Otherwise, why bother making it? Apart from purely generating revenue, which fair enough, valid reason. Then we get to The Lion King, and
anyone else feel like this movie was just an attempt to show off what their computers could do?
Oh my God, Alexis, you took the words right out of my mouth, because I walked out of that and I looked at my wife and she was like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I think that was a 2-hour photorealistic CGI demo reel that made George Lucas cream his pants."
Yeah, pretty much. I will go on saying, I've said this multiple times before, the movie is gorgeous and the CGI is amazing. I don't think anyone's ever going to knock it. It looks incredible.
With a handful of exceptions, yes.
Mostly with the close-ups of the hyena faces.
Yeah.
They looked a little smudgy. They looked a little too cartoonish. But the rest of it this movie had to succeed in only 2 places. There were 2 boxes it had to check. One was the photorealistic CGI. It had to nail. If it didn't nail, the whole film falls apart. And 2 was the voice acting, and that one I got to give him a C on, because half the voice acting in this was terrible. The other half was okay, but all the okay people are all the background supporting characters. The main cast sucked.
And James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I loved James Earl Jones. I still do. His portrayal of the original Mufasa is incredible, but that scene where he's dangling off the cliff and he's going, "Brother, help me!" I'm sitting there going, "Sweet Jesus, are you saying this while you're waiting for them to hand you a paycheck?"
Probably.
Given how much of this was just straight up retread, I'm surprised they didn't use his previous takes from the original animated movie.
What the other thing Melissa and I were talking about was, we don't think anybody read this in the same room as anyone else.
Almost certainly not.
Donald Glover walked in, read all of his lines. They marked them. They saved them all on the computer, and then they gave him his paycheck. They never
even made Donald Glover do a second take. That's the impression I got from this.
Yeah, I need to talk a lot about how terrible he is. He's the worst part of this movie. But Beyonce and Alfred Woodard and everybody, I don't think I don't even think there was a table reading. I honestly think they all got dates to come into the studio, read their lines, and then that was it. They just saved them.
I did read that they let Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner record together, and there are some parts you can tell. I'll get to this a little later when we talk more about the movie. But you can tell there are some parts that they kind of improvised a few lines on.
They're the best part of the movie.
Undoubtedly, yes.
So that makes sense.
Did I call it or not? I called it. I said Timon and Pumbaa are going to be awesome, and the CGI is going to be phenomenal, and that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say, the best parts of this movie are John Oliver, Billy Eichner, and Seth Rogen.
I give John Oliver no credit for this.
No, John Oliver's fucking hysterical in this movie.
I did not laugh at him.
Oh,
I laughed at one line of his, and I love John Oliver.
Yeah, that's how bad he was. His fans won't even really come to his defense on this one.
No, I'm Team John Oliver all the way. I thought, like I said, those 3 voice actors for this, I thought were the best parts of it. But all right, let's get to the meat of what we're doing here.
All right. As for the plot of The Lion King, watch the original. There is no change.
Yeah, they
for those 5 of you listening to this,
just to put an exclamation point on the point you were trying to make before, they did absolutely nothing to update this, other than look how far we've come with photorealistic CGI. There's no fleshing out of characters. The songs aren't much. The songs are either the exact same or worse.
Worse most of the time.
My wife almost threw her popcorn after "Be Prepared." And then
if I had popcorn, I would have thrown it.
And then got in the car and immediately played the Jeremy Irons version.
I nearly threw my popcorn.
Your wife is awesome.
I nearly threw my popcorn at another point in the movie, not to be prepared. I nearly threw my popcorn during a certain callback to another Disney film.
No. You know what? I love that. I'm not going to lie. It's so stupid, but it actually works.
It didn't work for me. Sorry. I was just like, are you kidding me?
So,
I mean, they weren't going to do they couldn't, given the way they went with this, they couldn't do the dress and drag and do the hula, which would have been better, which is great.
They could have done what they did in the stage play and had him do the Charleston. Okay, question. Have either of you seen Lion King on stage?
No.
Okay, I have. I saw it when I was living in London, got to see it on West End. Amazing stage performance. You know, it is really cool to see. And honestly, when I heard they were doing the Lion King remake, I was hoping they were going to incorporate more from the stage play into this. There's a handful more musical numbers in the stage play. There's a fleshing out of some more characters. There is actually, this actually pissed me off. The song that starts playing at the beginning of the the beginning of the credits, "He Lives in You," which was taken from the Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. That was prominent in the stage play. That's a song that Mufasa sings to Simba when they're after the elephant graveyard, and Simba asks, we'll always be together, right? And Mufasa starts talking about "Look to the Stars." He sings that, and when I heard that they were going to incorporate that song into this, I'm like, oh, we're going to have that moment where Mufasa sings. That's going to be so good. And they put it in the credits.
So one thing, and then I'm going to let Robert continue, but that is the point of the whole first 20 minutes of this podcast, was that they did nothing to update this. This was a giant waste of time, and we apologize. However, I got to say this before you jump into the same exact plot as the cartoon.
It's Hamlet. It's Hamlet, everybody.
When it started, and you get the "Hi, do," and the sun comes up and everything, my wife and I bursted out laughing. We could not contain ourselves. You would have thought we were high. I mean, when you talk about a shot for shot remake with no differentiation, no updating, no new take, no second look, no nothing. I mean, like, it begins the same exact way as the Lion King cartoon.
The opening is a shot for shot remake.
We could not contain ourselves, and it only went downhill from there. Yeah, exactly.
Eddie agreed. Again, there is a point where you say that it's impressive that it looks good that they did the shot for shot. On a technical level, you go, no, that is kind of cool that they even got the leaf cutter ants there, and then they got the zebras moving. There is something to that, but again, you don't feel like this is worthy enough of a movie. This feels like something that someone did for a demo reel to try to get a job out of college.
Yeah, this feels like a YouTube upload, not a Disney production.
To be fair, whoever did this should absolutely get whatever job they apply for in the VFX field, because gorgeous.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. Like, the most successful thing about this was the thing that it needed to be, which was the photorealistic CGI. Everything else is almost an utter failure. All right, let's stop reviewing the movie so Rob can tell us what it's about, so we can review the movie.
All right, let's go through this very briefly then. For the 5 of you who don't know the plot of The Lion King, again, it's Hamlet. We're introduced to Simba, the newborn son of the king of the Pride Lands, a very prominent hunting ground somewhere in Africa. That leads us to being introduced to some of the primary characters again. Simba's father, the king, Mufasa, voiced by James Earl Jones. Mufasa's brother, Scar, in this instance voiced by text-to-speech, Chitwili Ejiofor, who covets the throne and can't become king, and in all actuality would have been murdered by Mufasa, because that's how actual lions work, but let's just go with it for the sake of the story. So, again, Simba is your pretty typical obnoxious child born to royalty who thinks everything is going to be his and has yet to actually have the life experience to learn proper responsibility and restraint. We meet the hyenas, who are exiles from the Pride Lands because the story continues to perpetuate the myth that hyenas are a plague that consume everything, which is inaccurate. But I'll get to that later if it comes up again and it really bothers me. I don't know if it will or not. Scar is able to successfully orchestrate the murder of Mufasa. He convinces Simba to run off. He tries to have Simba killed. He thinks Simba's dead because hyenas are terrible at their jobs. Simba, racked with guilt, believing he caused his father's death, wanders off into the desert. Scar becomes king. Simba is saved from certain doom by Timon and Pumbaa, a meerkat and a warthog, who introduce him to a life of hedonistic nihilism, which is actually more true in this version, where they actually try to kind of espouse that bit of philosophy, and I would have been so much happier if they'd actually pointed out how profoundly stupid it is. But they don't, sadly. Years pass, Simba grows up, somehow becoming a very, very healthy vegan cat.
He eats bugs.
I'm just saying, you will not get to a 400-pound lion eating bugs. They have a very specific digestive system and nutritional needs. Not all of which will be met by consuming colonies of termites. Nala sneaks away from the Pride Lands as Scar has let the hyenas loose on the territory, and again, the hyenas are ravenous, all-consuming monstrosities that don't care about the actual balance of things. I feel so bad for hyenas as just a species. They get such a bad rap because of these movies. Nala sneaks off to go look for help. Scar attempts to convince... This is the closest we get to something added to this movie. There's a bit of a subplot where Scar also was in love with, or wanted to be with Sarabi, Mufasa's wife. So Nala sneaks off, stumbles across Simba, tries to get him to come back with her and reclaim his place on the throne and overthrow Scar. And Simba's like, nah, bruh, check out this grape ape, man. Sorry, utterly random reference.
Go smoke a bowl of grape, babe.
Yeah. Apparently it is, in fact, the name of a strand of marijuana. Rafiki shows up because he always does. And we get the scene where Mufasa's spirit calls to Simba and says, remember who you are. I actually have a major gripe with that scene, the way they did it in this movie. Simba decides, all right, fine, I'm going back. I will reclaim my place on the throne, etc., etc. Timon and Pumbaa follow along. The three of that group stages a bit of a coup. Simba confronts Scar, learns that no, it was actually Scar that killed Mufasa. He was not responsible. Battle sequence. Scar winds up being eaten by the hyenas after he sort of betrays them, trying to save his own backside. Simba becomes king. The circle of life continues. Yay.
All right. Let me, this is not going to take very long. So I don't think we need to be repeated ad nauseum how great the CGI looks in this. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's the best part of the movie. Let's move on. Donald Glover sucked as adult Simba. He sounded very mealy-mouthed, very, just very small.
He sounded like Donald Glover.
He doesn't fill out he had more personality as Lando in Solo. He has more personality in Atlanta, and I don't even watch the show. He's not a bad actor, and he can light up a room when he wants to. But I feel like he walked into the recording studio to do these lines, whispered them, and ran out of the room again. The voice coming out of adult Simba was so off, it took me out of the movie. However, J.D. McCrary as young Simba, spot on, sounded just like young Simba from the cartoon. So we talked about this earlier. Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner as Pumbaa and Timon, respectively, were very funny, had a lot of chemistry together. I thought they were great. They were probably the highlight of the movie for me. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Black Panther, he was fine as Scar.
I don't know. That's I don't think that's Black Panther. I think you are confusing your people.
Yes, you're right. Different guy. Sorry.
Yeah,
you're thinking of Baron Mordo.
Yeah, this is Baron Mordo.
You're right. This is Baron Mordo. At least I got a Marvel character right. So anyway,
I'm not sure you get credit for that.
So Baron Mordo is Scar. I thought he was fine, but he had no business singing
No,
Be Prepared.
No. No, he is not fine. No, he is terrible.
He's okay. When he's delivering dialogue, he's fine. He just shouldn't be singing.
When he's delivering dialogue, he's still terrible.
Okay, you and I will just disagree.
I'll wait. Look, I'll make my
I
case when it's my turn. But let's so you know, you're wrong.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think there's something extra to say for both your points.
I mean, to me, let me get through this without you jumping all over me like Tigger. He's serviceable in the role. He's serviceable in the role, but his singing sucks so bad that it took away from my enjoyment overall of the movie. Alfred Woodard as Sarabi was fine. My other and I thought John Oliver was funny. We've already discussed that I'm alone there. Here's my other really big complaint about this, and people might get offended by what I'm about to say, but hello, this is the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Have we met? If you hire Beyonce to do voice acting for you, or even to have her in a role, Beyonce has a wonderful, sultry sounding voice. She has soulful. That's the word I was looking for. She has a soulful, sultry voice. That's what you're hiring her for. Whatever diction coach beat the living shit out of her personality that's inherent in her voice, and then gave this sort of stock, robotic, utterly bereft of any personality voice work she did for Nala, needs to be taken out back and shot. She was the worst. I mean, Donald Glover just sounds like he didn't give a shit. She actually actively sounded bad as Nala. And I don't understand why you would hire Beyonce and then take all the Beyonce out of Beyonce. Well, you might as well have just hired Kate Blanchett or fucking what's her nuts there, Meryl Streep. Yeah, what's her nuts, Meryl Streep, as Nala. Then, like, if you want like proper diction, hire an actress known for proper diction. If you want Beyonce because she's got soul, brother, then fucking let her do it that way. What the hell? This was I couldn't. Every time Nala talked, I just wanted to get up and leave the theater. And because there was so much of that in this movie, you're gonna, other than my wife and I just looking at each other at times and laughing at how bad this movie was, I was not having a good time. James Earl Jones sounded less dead as Mufasa than he sounded as Darth Vader in Rogue One, so good for him. Everybody else was fine. The hyenas were funny. The rest of the voice acting, nobody really took me out of it. The songs, other than Be Prepared, which was the dirt worst, seemed okay. Nothing really threw me off. Oh, the one thing, and this isn't necessarily a knock, I just got confused. John Canny as Rafiki, I could have bet money was Mel Brooks. I swear to God, I thought Rafiki was being voiced by Mel Brooks in this. And I'm like, oh, that's a fun choice. Nope, wrong guy, John Canny.
So instead of a legit Broadway African actor, you thought it was everyone's favorite Jew.
Correct. Legit thought it was Mel Brooks. This was a giant waste of time, and I apologize on behalf of Disney. Alexis?
For the record, I do not blame Chiwetel Ejiofor for his role. He was simply given bad direction. He is a great actor, and I feel that that's the case for a lot of the actors. It's a similar argument we had when we talked about Dark Phoenix. No one in this cast is a bad actor, but it's clear they were given terrible direction for what to do.
Can I jump in here then and ask you what the hell happened to Jon Favreau in between the Iron Man movies and the Jungle Book and then this?
I can tell you that. I think I actually have the answer for this.
Well, I asked her, so let her answer, and then you can mansplain.
I have an answer, but you know what, Robert? I'd like to hear your answer first.
Oh, God damn it.
Okay. In all seriousness, let's look at the casts by comparison between the Jungle Book and this, since that's probably... We have the same director. We have a lot of the same aesthetic choices in terms of the style of CGI, the style of
the Jungle Book and the Lion King are apples to apples as opposed to Iron Man and the Lion King, which is apples to watermelons. Got it. Go.
Okay. So Well, you bring up a good point about the director's history. So let's take something that is him, but is also deals a lot within the same medium. Again, let's consider for just a second the cast, the voice cast for The Jungle Book. Let's start with Bill Murray. Bill Murray actually has more personality at this point in his career in his voice than he does in his face. And I don't mean that as a shot at him, okay? He's always been more of a deadpan comic. And he gets across a lot of what he does vocally, more so than with physical acting, especially as late as as advanced as he is in his age. But has gobs of personality in his voice. Eminently recognizable, and is pretty clearly having a lot of fun with the role of Baloo most of the time. You have Ben Kingsley playing a deliberately stuffy, uptight character. So that good casting, and again, someone with a lot of vocal prominence.
Christopher Walken as King Louie.
I mean, what can you say? There's nothing bad to say about Christopher Walken as King Louie. Idris Elba as
Shere Khan.
Same thing. You're dealing with a guy who is very used to doing a lot with his voice when it comes to his acting. Be that accents, be that resonance. Again, look at him in The Wire, and then listen to him on Luther.
Yeah.
Very, 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 very different vocal performances, but both deliberately get a reaction when he speaks as much as through anything he does with his face.
Can you imagine the reaction I had when I found out Idris Elba was not from Baltimore? Because goddamn.
No, because I also...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to insult Mark's cultural sensitivity.
Well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of that also goes to the fact that Kingsley and Idris Elba are both classically trained stage actors.
I would completely agree with that.
No, you're absolutely right. The cast that we got for The
Now,
Lion King...
now let's consider The Lion King.
Hang on, would you let her finish? Jesus.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Honestly, I've interrupted you guys just as many times. It's fine. No, Robert, you are absolutely correct. We got a bunch of A-list names for The Lion King, but none of them are real classically trained voice actors. None of them are stage actors. The few that those of us have admitted we liked are comedic actors. I think comedic actors are the best for vocal work because they know how to put their all into just one phrase. Donald Glover, Beyonce, all of them, they're all great, but they do not have any real training in this. They're not used to it. Hell, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Donald Glover, as much as I do like him, I don't think he has any actual acting training. Was he found on YouTube?
He did singing, I think, kind of. I'm not deeply familiar with his history. I know he does some musical stuff.
Yeah.
Well, again, to that point, let's consider, just for another apples-to-apples comparison, let's consider, because Chiwetel Ejiofor is a good actor. I am aware of this on an intellectual level. You can't watch some of his work, 12 Years a Slave specifically, if you want to...
Oh, great movie.
Okay, you can't look at his work in that and tell me he's a bad actor. You're lying. He's a good actor. But there's a significant difference between an actor being good on camera and an actor being good with their voice. There's a lot of actors, and I don't mean this as any major slight because what I'm about to describe is very difficult. But there's a lot of actors who, if you take away their face, bring almost nothing to the table. They have to have that specific thing to him. They have to have their eyes to him. I mean, James Marsden as Cyclops. I mean, we can argue how much of that was, direction and writing and whatnot, but the fact remains, at the end of the day, that some of that's on him not being able to do anything because he didn't know how to act around the visor. And by contrast, I hate to bring up one of the gold standards of this, but Robert Englund wearing 8 hours worth of prosthetic makeup as Freddy Krueger learns how to work with it, how to make it part of the character.
Well,
try to
contain your racism against Ryan Reynolds, but I mean, look at his facial expressions underneath a complete mask in Deadpool.
Very true.
Fair enough. I give the CGI team a lot of credit for that.
So here's my question to you. Jon Favreau didn't all of a sudden forget how to direct, and you can only put so much on the cast's inability to command vocal range and voiceover work. He's able to get it out of a superior cast in the Jungle Book. I get that. I get that part of your argument. But he, again, didn't become a worse director over time, so why couldn't he push these actors a little further?
I don't think there was any... Again, when I said that I think they gave Donald Glover one take, I'm not joking. Like, that seems like first take stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was timing. I don't know if it was money. If they just sunk so much of the budget into the CGI that they couldn't really compensate the actors for their time the same way to spend 3 days recording.
That's fair.
Because they want to make sure things get done properly.
I was going to say, this is not a cheap movie. This was $260 million.
I am aware this is an expensive movie, okay? I am not making the case that this was done on a shoestring budget. I will make a case for allotment of funds. Like, where do you think that? Because none of the cast saw an appreciable amount of $260 million.
Right. No, I get that.
So so when I say a budgetary issue, it's not that there was not money to be had. It's how are we going to spend the money allocated to us?
All right. So there's your take on it. Alexis, what was your take?
I feel like Disney really had tight reins on this project. I have a sneaking suspicion that I could be 100% wrong, but I have a suspicion that they did not want to let Favreau really deviate from what they had. Even if he came in saying, okay, so we're going to change this character and maybe pull in this from the Broadway stage or whatever, I bet Disney was putting their foot down saying, no, don't do that. This felt like a film that really had, I don't know if you want to call it too many cooks in the kitchen, but it really felt like it was controlled from point A to point Z.
Yeah,
that's
I'm sure it's
true.
probably a little from column A and a little from column B. But yeah, this was not all things considered between the cast and the director. This was like a C effort. And what kills me about that is how much money this is going to be another $1 billion movie, and it absolutely doesn't deserve it, but it will be. So,
yeah, I'd agree with that. So
hang on.
That overarching.
So hang on. So Alexis was in the middle of her review.
Yeah,
and I butted in with
go ahead.
this.
Yeah. This is the point that I made. I saw this with my aunt. She and I always go to a lot of the Disney movies and the animated movies together. I've seen most of Disney films actually with her, and she enjoyed the film. But this is the point I made to her. A couple of years ago, I used to run a column on animation, and I did the top 10 most impactful deaths of all time in animation, movie and TV. And Mufasa's death was on that.
I would probably top 5, but probably not top 1.
No, he was number 2. Actually, just for fun, can you guys guess what number 1 was? It wasn't Bambi's mother.
I would guess Littlefoot's mom, actually.
Dang. Very good. That was number 1 for me. So watching this movie during the scene with the stampede in the gorge and Simba coming across his father's body, and again, Mark, what you said about the child actor playing young Simba, that kid's going to go on to some great things. He was really nailing his lines.
Yeah.
You could feel the emotion in the kid. And I'm watching the scene, and I started crying a little. But I suddenly realized I'm not crying because of this movie. I'm crying because it's all I can think about is the original animated film. And that still gets me. I still get teary-eyed when I watch it. You have just one of the most impactful moments in 2D animated history. And I look at the screen when Scar comes and he sees Simba curled up next to his father's dead body. And this CGI lion looks up, and I think, that is not the face of a child who has just gone through traumatic loss. That's the same face Eddie gives me when he wants a TREAT. And for the record, the dog is laying right next to me, so there's a reason I'm spelling.
I like the fact that you spelled treat to your dog, like I do to my kids.
He knows what that word is. He does.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. I want to know if it was Favreau or a writer or someone else at the Disney big wig heads who thought it was a good idea to have Simba's hair drift along, be eaten by a giraffe, be shit out, and then have it get to Rafiki. What the fuck was that?
So here's a good time for me to jump in with this bit from the Wikipedia page. Shot-for-shot claim. The trailers of the film led to a claim of its being a shot-for-shot remake of Disney's 1994 film. On December 23rd, 2018, Sean Bailey, wait, wrong guy, Disney's president of production, said that while the film will revere and love those parts that the audience wants, there will be things in the movie that are going to be new. On April 18th, 2019, Favreau said, some shots in the 94 animated film are so iconic, he couldn't possibly change them, hence cracking me and my wife
correct.
up. But despite what the trailer suggests, this film is not just the same movie over again, liar. And later said it's much longer than the original film by approximately 30 minutes. And part of what we're doing here is to give it more dimension, liar, not just visually, but both story-wise and emotionally, liar. On May 30th, 2019, Favreau said that some of the humor and characterizations are being altered to be more consistent with the rest of the film. And this remake is making some changes in certain scenes from the original film, as well as in its structure. Where? What scenes? What are you talking about? On June 14th, 2019, Favreau stated that while the original film's main plot points will remain unchanged in the remake, the film will largely diverge from the original version, liar, and hinted that the elephant graveyard, the hyena's lair in the original film, will be replaced by a new location. So there's your explanation for giraffe shit.
I looked at my aunt when I saw the piece of lion hair on the dung beetle's shitball with this look on my face of, you've got to be kidding me. And she looked back at me and said, well, that's the circle of life. And I said, that's not a circle of life. That's a circle of shit. And that is this movie. A giant circle of shit.
I can think of no better way than to go to Robert Winfree. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Let me see. Okay, again, I've got to spend a fair bit of time on this. I've made no bones about it. Scar is one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite Disney villain. Just straight up. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. He's the best. And unfortunately, I don't know why you wouldn't get Jeremy Irons back for this. If at all possible.
He was busy doing Justice League?
He did actually.
Oh yeah, he is. Sorry.
He did actually offer to come back. He loved doing that role, and when he found out they were doing a remake, he said, "I'm available."
Not black enough.
Have you seen?
Yeah, pretty much.
Have you seen the behind the scenes stuff that because they've released some of the recording footage they have of the voice actors from the original. Have you seen him singing Be Prepared?
No.
It's great. He gets into it. He's actually dancing a little bit.
And yet they still had to cover him with Jim Cummings on a handful of parts.
True.
But that's actually not a slam at Irons. That's more just a praising at the amazingness that is Jim Cummings.
Hey, look, man, if you can replicate Jeremy Irons that fluidly when he's singing, Godspeed, man. You are awesome.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with. So I'm a little bit. Again, I try very hard not to be the, how could you recast this role, or if it's not so and so, it's not my whatever. Like that's pretty stupid. Because even the most iconic roles can be redone and reimagined. I mean, as way of example from my personal experience, I never thought anyone other than Anthony Hopkins would ever really be Hannibal Lecter. And then Mads Mikkelsen comes along and turns that on its head. So it is certainly possible. So I don't know why. Again, I'm not sure why they wouldn't try to get Jeremy Irons back, because he injects such glee into that role. And unfortunately, and I can do a one-to-one comparison here because a lot of the lines are the same. By contrast, Ejiofor's is flat. There's very little emotion in anything he does. And I don't know if they're trying to go for cold, calculating, emotionless guy.
Yeah, I think they were going for sinister. Like, instead of being over the top, like Disney villainish, I think they were purposely like what if you were what if you really were just like a cold, calculating manipulator? You wouldn't sound over the top. Was probably the direction he got.
But wasn't that what we loved about Scar?
Yeah. If you want to go that way, you need menace. And unfortunately, again, we're devoid of menace, even if you wanted to go that route. So you get a very flat performance from him, and I don't know how much of that is him. I don't know how much of that is direction. I don't know how much of that is external factors, whatever. But very little of that works for me. And I have to give Be Prepared its own little special rant here for just a second. Be Prepared is probably, in my estimation, the best Disney villain song. Now, when you get to the top 3 or so of that particular list, a lot of it comes down to personal preference. And fair enough, I know, look, if you want to stump for Hellfire from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, fine. You can stump away. That's a great piece of music.
Nobody remembers it. You're fine.
Actually, Hellfire, Poor Unfortunate Souls, and Be Prepared are my top 3.
Yes, but you're like a cartoon aficionado. Regular people don't remember The Hunchback of Notre Dame and didn't see it.
I'm not sure how true that, again, I mean, I'd actually argue that the soundtrack from Hunchback is very well remembered. The movie, no one could tell you anything about.
I was just going to say that's a pity because more people need to hear Tony J singing.
I mean, again, I love the soundtrack to Hunchback. It is genuinely brilliant, but I don't know who that movie was made for.
No one does.
No one really does.
They were on a streak and thought they could do no wrong, and then they realized, oh, wait a minute, we can. Never mind.
We can make a movie. We can make a kids movie, quote unquote, that doesn't actually appeal to any child.
Has no princesses in it. Is a book that they're not going to read until they're in high school, maybe. Yeah, this is not a brilliant decision on their part.
And hey, Jason Alexander.
He deserves better.
Fair enough. He's the only cast member from Seinfeld who doesn't suck.
He supposedly did a thing in L.A. doing the producers with him as Max Bialystock and Martin Short as Leo Bloom. I would have killed to have seen that.
That would have been great. Anyway, Be Prepared is, again, my favorite, one of the best objectively, and you do that to it. I don't know who made that decision, how many people were involved in it, but you should all be flogged publicly. That is a crime that you committed.
So I'm just picturing somebody at Disney getting like a daily of Baron Mordo singing Be Prepared. And they're like, this isn't quite gay enough. Do it again.
I don't. That's not the. Wow. What? I'm not sure how you got there.
I just don't get why they strip the hyenas of all their personality. I mean, you don't want to have Whoopi Goldberg being a hyena, fine. You don't want Cheech Marin to be a hyena, fine. And props to Keegan-Michael Key and Eric Andre. They were funny. I laughed. But the hyenas were bland.
Because they didn't want, like any kind of racial or particularly offensive humor. So instead we're gonna go with sort of a modern, you're in my space, Seinfeld-ish type of thing. That'll offend nobody and only make half the audience laugh.
It won't offend anyone, and it will only amuse. Actually, your approximation of 50% is probably generous. I was going to go 30. And okay, so there's that. There's again a villain who's absolutely critical to this story working. You have to hate Scar, but at the same time, he has to be charming enough to be compelling. And you get neither menace nor charm, nor compulsion, nor intrigue out of this performance. And be that visually or the actors or the vocals, just none of it. James Earl Jones, I love you. This felt like you were getting a paycheck.
What do you think was worse, his Darth Vader in Rogue One, or which was awful, or his reading of Mufasa Part 2?
You know, I'm torn on this one because the dialogue he's given for Vader in Rogue One is so bad. They give him a pun. They give Darth Vader a pun.
Yeah.
That's just so stupid. Like that's beyond the pale.
I mean, I liked Rogue One, but that was a take out my dick and piss on the screen moment.
Unfortunately, it's also hard not to separate Darth Vader from James Earl Jones, because while he doesn't really get a lot, at least you get some cool visuals with James Earl Jones, whereas here you get lousy lines with Mufasa and you get lousy visuals with Mufasa.
Yeah, and at least Rogue One gave us a singular moment of Vader badassery that was so needed.
Oh, I love that scene.
And
so great.
And there was much fanfic.
You're not wrong. I think I mentioned this earlier on this podcast, but so many of his lines are straight up retread, like the same line from the original. I don't know why they didn't use his previous take. Because some of those were just better.
I'm actually wondering if that's a Screen Actors Guild thing. Like they can't.
It might be. Well, I imagine they couldn't without permission, but like they reuse stuff. They do reuse old dialogue like that frequently. I imagine there's a legal bit they could go through.
You know what? They probably said, "Hey, we want to reuse your dialogue from the original movie," and he was like, "Why don't I just come back in and give you a new recording?" And everyone's happy, and they were like, "Oh, fuck, we'll get James Earl Jones in; it'll be fine." And then he came in, took a giant shit in the recording studio, and left.
No. I imagine it's this. They said, "Hey, we want to reuse some of your lines. We're redoing this," and he said, "You know, I'm happy to come in and read for you again." They said, "Sure, this is going to be great." And then he got in there and looked at it and went, "Oh, this is literally the same thing I did 20 years ago. You haven't done anything new. All right, my enthusiasm just died, and so will my performance." And because I'm James Earl freaking Jones, none of you are going to say anything.
Right.
I do give him a little leeway that, yeah, he is 25 years older than he was when he recorded that first one. So,
and he was not exactly a young man in the original.
So it's like, yeah, it's clear that it was just a paycheck, but at the same time going, well, he is so much older. So
and I mean, who else? Again, I'm taking a giant dump on an Oscar-nominated actor because of his performance as an iconic villain. Who would you have gotten to do Mufasa apart from James Earl Jones?
Idris Elba.
No.
I honestly can't.
He's too busy being a CGI cat.
He's also Black Superman. Can't wait.
No, actually, you're not wrong. First he was Shere Khan, now he's McCavity.
Fair enough. All right, there's a few other things I did want to briefly touch on because they pad this movie out with a bunch of unnecessary and useless stuff in order to avoid the shot-for-shot claim, I think. Like, okay, here's a bunch of stuff that doesn't actually add much. I think the closest we get to actually adding is you get a bit more of Timon and Pumbaa actually expressing, again, hedonistic nihilism. And I do wish that, again, I really would have preferred that whole philosophy gets shot in the head publicly in this movie. But instead, it's, you're our friend, so we'll bend our excesses because we like you. They also took out, and this might be a really small thing, and it might be kind of stupid. Everyone else might be saying how you're nitpicking, whatever. Again, it's my show. So, shut up and listen because you're listening, or skip ahead. I don't really care. During Simba doing Mufasa's revisiting of Simba before he heads back to the Pride Lands. There's a line that Mufasa says in the original that they removed from this that I think alters the entire tenor of that interaction and what follows. Because in the original, given the context of, this is essentially God speaking to his child, he says to Simba, look at yourself, you are more than what you have become. And it's a chastisement that is much needed for Simba's, deliberate abdication of anything approaching responsibility. And unfortunately, they remove it from this version, and it just alters the entire feel of that scene for me to it just being, please remember who you are, not a kick in the ass that is desperately needed.
If I could follow up with you on that, first of all, who else was disappointed that all this money into the CGI and that little thing with the clouds is all they did for Mufasa's reveal?
Yes.
I mean, in the animated film, that is so epic. You see the clouds forming, you see the light shining behind him. It's so amazing. This one looked like Galactus from Rise of the Silver Surfer.
A little bit.
But if I can add, I did notice that, but that's not the part that actually genuinely pissed me off about that scene. It's that they removed Rafiki's moral. One of the things
true.
about the original Lion King, and a moral that you don't hear in a lot of children's films, that I love. Rafiki smacks Simba on the head with his staff, and he's like, doesn't matter, it's in the past, but you can either run from it or learn from it. And that is one of the greatest morals I think Disney has ever put out, and they did include it. It's like, why would you cut that?
Because they didn't want the monkey to have a stick until the fight scene at the end. I don't know.
I was going to go with Disney doesn't.
Tell me I'm wrong that it sucked that they cut that moral.
I was going to go with
agree with
Disney didn't want violence in their children's film.
Oh, shut up, Mark. I love that. I love that he, because, Simba's, again, desperately trying to avoid responsibility and just, the past doesn't matter. And so he smacks him on the head. Ow! What'd you do that for? It doesn't matter. It's in the past. You've expressed this desire. Yeah, but it still hurts. Oh, the past can hurt.
If they didn't want him to hit him with the staff, they could have had him throw mud at him or something.
There's so many ways they could be, and again, Rafiki is that whole interaction is perfectly poised to actually point out the stupidity of the philosophy and the lifestyle that Timon and Pumbaa are trying to live out, because it is shallow and pointless and stupid and leads to nothing of value. And instead, it seems like they didn't want to offend all of the hedonistic nihilists out there who are going to see their movie. And instead went for kind of a half measure that removes, again, this genuinely great moral from Rafiki and makes Mufasa less of the father figure that he should be, and more of just a, come on, remember, you're not this remember who you are, please, instead of again, kind of a kick in the ass that Simba needed. They also took out, I think, an important line of dialogue from Simba. And it's an odd one that they chose to remove, because it does give you a bit more insight into his character. All these years later, I forget where it takes place specifically within the original, but after he shouts up at the night sky, I think this is right before he encounters Rafiki the first time. He is struggling with who he is. He's met back up with Nala, and he just looks up at the night sky and says, "You said you'd always be there for me, but you're not. And it's my fault." And I don't know why they would cut that unless Donald Glover's reading of it was utterly inaudible, which is entirely possible.
No, that was a really good scene. Really felt like they trimmed down a lot of the important lessons. They even cut that line when Mufasa is chewing out young Simba for going into the elephant graveyard. They cut the line, "Being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble."
Okay, so I guarantee you that there was a script doctoring session for this where they took out a lot of stuff, and it was like they read through, like, let's with red ink cross out all the stuff that's going to bore children. Just leave in the cute stuff, and that's what we got.
And yet, for some reason, we need a scene of Scar trying to blackmail Sarabi into
They had to give more shit for the girl lions to do.
I'm just saying they made some bad choices as far as the editing of that went.
But can you disagree that probably didn't happen?
There's a deleted scene from the original Lion King, which was expanded upon in the stage version. It's called The Madness of King Scar, in which Scar is lamenting about how come he's not more popular, and Zazu's trying to put some sense into his head, going, well, you've been doing this, and you haven't been doing this, and you haven't been doing this, and am I getting through to you? And Scar essentially realizes, oh, I need a queen. That'll make people like me. And he doesn't go for Sarabi. He actually goes for Nala. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, basically, it's like, wow, you've gotten older. And he essentially threatens her to become his queen. And that's one of the reasons she takes off to look for help, is because she's been threatened now by the king.
Because the king's gotten awfully rapey?
Yeah, pretty much.
They're animal. I mean, come on, they're animals.
Yeah, but again, if they wanted to expand more with that, they could have included that scene. It was cut from the original. It was included in the stage play, and I felt that it was a really good way to kind of elaborate more on Scar's character, that he just could not understand what he needed to do.
So my kids had the best reaction to this movie, by the way. First of all, this is yet another one where my daughter was like, yeah, I like the original better. So she's becoming that person. But the other...
Well, she's not wrong in this instance.
But the other thing I thought was really funny, that both of them have grown up with a cartoon show on Disney Junior called The Lion Guard, which is Simba's kid. Simba's daughter is the queen of the Pride Lands, and Simba's son, his second child, is the captain of the guard. He's the Lion Guard. And he just
which is not actually how that works, but okay.
And so he's running around and yelling at hyenas and shit like that. It's a fine cartoon. They've made a lot of toys. My kids loved it, when they were actively watching Disney Junior and a lot younger. My son at the end of this movie was just like, I know where they're going with the sequel. First of all, love that. Second, he's like, the next one's going to be The Lion Guard. And they're going to do a live... He pitched it in the theater, and I wanted to just take him to Toys R Us and buy him all the things. He pitched a Lion Guard photorealistic CGI sequel to this. My son's for hire, Disney. I just want you to know, my son will gladly be a pitchman for future live-action movies. So will my daughter.
Incidentally, since you brought up the sequel, I can't believe I spaced on My Lullaby as a great Disney villain song. Only decent thing to come out of the sequel, mind you, but it is a great song.
Are you done?
No, I think I need to discuss the elephant in the room, so to speak. Not the literal elephant, because there's plenty of those in the movie. I'm not sure the decision to go completely photorealistic in this case, while it is, again, there's some absolutely stunningly beautiful CGI. Unfortunately, the lack of real animation from both the character models and the voice actors mixes together to make a deeply unengaging experience. To make for a deeply unengaging experience.
Yeah, lion faces are not particularly expressive.
And I get that they wanted to do, we're not doing, the same degree of cartooniness that we did in the original. Fine. But when Baloo the bear gets to be expressive, and granted he also got to do something, again, you have, first of all, the vocals of Bill Murray, as we already touched on. And some of the physical stuff they let Baloo do with the rest of his character model instead of just his face, that makes him more of an engaging character. In this instance, it's a lot of static shots of the characters and no real engagement of there's no real engagement for you auditorily, and there's no real engagement for you visually apart from, boy, that looks beautiful. So who's really into this movie as it's going on?
It doesn't help. We keep saying lion faces aren't that expressive. You guys did see the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right?
Nope.
Yes, I have.
Liam Neeson's lion, Aslan, was very expressive, and that's
Very.
got to be one of the most flat vocal actors in the history of mankind. They made
And-
that work.
In fairness, they did seem to ask him for that.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, isn't that a Chronicles of Narnia movie?
Yes.
Yep.
It is the first.
Yeah, I've never seen any of them. I've made a lot of Narnia jokes, but I've never actually seen the movie.
Or read the books. I'd wager.
Books of
Mark
Vernon.
does not read.
Books of Vernon.
Look, LeFou,
Mark
we
it
know
off
you're
on the
illiterate.
bingo card.
Last thing I have to say about this from kind of a craft perspective.
Wait, did you just call me LeFou?
Yes, you're illiterate.
Thanks. No one fights like Gaston. Sorry, go ahead.
It just occurs to me that I'm illiterate and I've never had to spell it out loud before.
Does that make you Gaston?
No, Jesse's Gaston. I'm not nearly extroverted enough to be Gaston.
So what does that make you? Make Lumiere?
No, I would never sing to a dinner guest. I don't know who I would be from The Lion King, actually. Or
Beauty
that
and the
either.
Beast. I don't know. I think you're the Beast.
I don't know who I'd be from Beauty and the Beast.
You're the Beast. Or you're Belle. You're Belle. That's it. Moving on.
I want to refute that, but apart from, again, the not singing, I'm not sure I can from a personality perspective.
Nope, that's where we're moving on.
All right. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to say on craft, and I don't know I don't know if this is the fault of the photorealism or if there were just limitations on this particular sequence. But watch the Stampede scene from the original. Watch the Stampede from this one. And I don't know, the Stampede scene in this one lacks energy. All the wildebeest seem like they're trotting, not galloping in a frenzy.
We were sailing along.
Okay. I don't know that reference, but okay.
Either way, mark another spot up on the bingo card. Mark just
Mark
saying.
sings. So
Wait a minute.
Again,
you didn't catch that one, Alexis? That's a Bugs Bunny thing. He was, he's... never mind. It's Bugs Bunny.
For the record, that song has been used in much more than just Bugs Bunny cartoons, so I didn't know which reference you were pulling.
When in doubt, it's Bugs Bunny.
fair enough. Bugs is awesome.
Yes, he is.
There's just a lack of energy to that sequence, and I don't know if they just struggled to get the wildebeest character models moving fast enough and have it still be readable.
Not for nothing, this whole movie lacks energy. That was actually my biggest problem with it, is that the whole thing just seemed like it lacked any kind of personality.
And the last thing about this from a craft perspective, because you talked a little bit about the songs from the film itself, such as they are. Just the music generally. Lion King has one of the best scores Disney has produced, and that's saying something because they have a lot of profoundly brilliant music. And you take Oscar-winning material, and you look at it and decide, you know what, I think we can do better. And you can't. Like, there was just no way to really improve upon this, and they seemed to think that they could, and instead they just wound up butchering a lot of it. I don't know. It was kind of a shame that they took that solid a material to begin with and did what they did to it.
I agree. The fact that they used a lot of the exact same musical cues. I mean, that they use the exact music for the wildebeest stampede. I've seen that movie I've seen the original Lion King more times than I can count. And when the wildebeest start coming over the cliff, I'm like, that's the exact cue, the same notes, the same music.
The whole final battle between the hyenas and the lions and Simba and Scar, same music. It doesn't really resonate, and this movie, like you said, it lacks energy, it lacks personality. Apart from just, ooh, it looks pretty, it's utterly devoid of life.
But doesn't that sum up movies in 2019? Utterly pretty and devoid of life?
No. Not all of them, but a lot. Mostly the ones you make me watch. You have a great eye for picking out movies that are devoid of anything useful apart from ooh shiny.
Hey, we get to watch Tarantino next week.
You can't do it all the time, or I just quit.
All right.
If there's a few of these movies that he's said, hey, it's on the schedule. If he leaves them on, I might do it anyway.
Charlie's Angels. All right.
Not a joke. I'm gonna find something else to watch and review in place of that.
Sounds great. I can't wait to do a completely unprofessional review. Speaking of...
No, look, we've done split reviews before. You saw it. You can talk about it.
All right, speaking of unprofessional, here comes the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All right, let's get this out of the way real quick. People, congratulations. You've accomplished something in your life. Avengers is the highest grossing, not adjusted for inflation, highest grossing box office blockbuster in the history of film. It took down Avatar. Yay!
Robert, you owe him an apology.
I did not think they would cross that line. I thought they'd fall just a little bit short. I was incorrect. Congratulations to Avengers Endgame for technically unseating, non-adjusted for inflation, if we adjust for inflation, the fifth highest grossing movie of all time.
I accept your apology. So the number one movie of the weekend on a budget of $264 million was, of course, The Lion King, and there was much rejoicing.
Yay.
Yay. As of this recording, it has currently made $564 million. Spider-Man got knocked from 1 to 2. Toy Story 2 to 3. Crawl 3 to 4. Yesterday retained its place for a second week in a row at number 5. Stuber dropped from 4 to 6. Good for you, Batista. Aladdin 6 to 7 and has almost hit its $1 billion mark. Annabelle Comes Home dropped from 7 to 8. Midsommar dropped from 8 to 9. And The Secret Life of Pets 9 to 10. And Avengers Endgame retained its place at 11. Rounding out the top 20 were The Farewell, The Art of Self-Defense, Rocket Man, John Wick Chapter 3, Men in Black International, Mentor, Super 30, Wild Rose, and Maiden. Dark Phoenix currently number 24, just in case anyone was,
No one cares. Everyone involved with that got fired.
We've all forgotten that movie exists already.
It haunts my dreams.
Here's where we stand for the year. Disney owns your world. Avengers Endgame is obviously still number 1. Captain Marvel number 2. Aladdin, as I said, is about 11 million away from $1 billion. Spider-Man.
We'll hit that next week.
Spider-Man's 25 million away from $1 billion. Toy Story is about 140 million away from $1 billion.
That one might not make it.
It might not. I mean,
it'll be close, but it might not. If it does, it'll be barely.
Yeah, it's what a year for Disney, right? Everybody.
I'm sure they're lamenting that Toy Story 4 only made will only wind up making $998 million.
Everybody in the Disney boardroom has no pants on and is hard as a rock, including the women. The Wandering Earth was
mental image. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do it in your Snagglepuss voice.
Oh God, not again.
Everybody's hard as a rock.
And somehow you once again transition into the stroke guy from The Simpsons.
That's why Snagglepuss having a stroke voice.
No. Yes.
Yes.
Talk like that.
No,
I had a stroke.
The Lion King, currently at number 7 with 564, as I said before. How to Train Your Dragon is still in the top 10, but knocked down to number 8. Pokemon, number 9, and Alita Battle Angels hanging in there at number 10. Knocked out of the top 10, Godzilla, Shazam, Dumbo, The Secret Life of Pets, John Wick, Us, Dark Phoenix, Men in Black, Glass, and Annabelle Comes Home.
We all knew none of those were really going to last.
So,
a few of them significantly overperformed.
Depending on whether or not you count Spider-Man as a Disney movie, since they're the ones that made it, but they made it for Sony, so let's go ahead and credit Disney with this just to make the point. Disney currently owns 6 out of 10 spots, and we still have Star Wars to go. Wow.
All hail the mouse.
Goddamn right.
Woohoo!
That was the most awkward sounding Mickey I think I've ever heard.
Wait, his or mine?
I thought that was for one person.
No. I started, he ended.
Yeah.
You both sound terrible.
My Mickey is very concerned about all the hard women in the boardroom without any pants on.
Why is it that your Mickey is too low and your Snagglepuss is too high?
I don't know. Anyway. So, I'm on the wrong thing. All right, so release schedule. This week, I mean, people will go see it, but none of the people going to see this either are, this is not really competitive with The Lion King. I'm sure it'll probably end up being number one again.
I don't know. I didn't you say you were taking your children to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to get their perspective as well?
No, that would be a giant waste of time.
All right, kids. Today we're going to talk about the Manson murders.
Have you kids heard of Sharon Tate? Come along. Let me tell you a story. No, they're going to have a sleepover with Grandma and Grandpa. And my wife and I are going to have a date. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is up against the second week of The Lion King. I don't think that's particularly competitive. But a film
you're right, just wildly different audiences.
But what might be competitive in a film I am taking my children to because they are super duper excited about this, The Fast and Furious presents Black Superman, otherwise known as Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah, you should not take your children to see that.
We're all going. It's going to be fantastic.
Look, I'm warning you. You will have to answer some very awkward questions after that movie.
Like what?
Look, just take my word for it.
Do you think a porn's going to break out in the middle of it?
Look,
like Jason
what The
Statham's
Rock
gonna...
and Roman Reigns do on screen is going to make your children ask questions.
Like mid-explosion, Jason Statham just blows The Rock? I don't...
No, that's not in Jason Statham's contract.
Robert, I'm sorry, but the way you paused there was like
Sorry,
blood.
I had a bit of
scrambling your brain trying to
No,
think of something.
I know. I had something caught in my throat and I had to mute myself.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
No,
Anyhow.
Look, in all seriousness, there's going to be a lot of language in that you might have to...
They've heard me curse before. It'll be fine.
Wait, isn't that movie PG-13?
Probably.
The Rock's getting 2 F-bombs.
Yeah, and they've heard me...
At least.
Believe me, it's nothing my kids haven't heard. Which, by the way, so my son thought the Joey Ryan's penis party was the most funniest wrestling he's ever seen, but refuses to talk about it with anyone but me because he knows it's inappropriate.
Credit to your kid for knowing it's inappropriate, but shame on you for letting him watch.
Yeah, it was a poor parenting choice, I'm not going to lie.
That was a poor choice. Look, that was a poor choice by you. It was a poor choice by your son. It was a poor choice by the carrier. It was a poor choice by the wrestlers. Everyone.
Yeah, everyone should be ashamed. We get no points. And
Deeply ashamed.
Anyway, nothing is competitive with The Lion King for like 2 weeks. By week 3, we're into Dora and the Lost City of the Gold, and the movie we're going to review.
I am torn on that. I'm not sure anyone's going to go see it.
I don't know, man. My daughter is like hot for that movie. Meanwhile, we're going to go see The Kitchen, you and I.
No, I will not be seeing The Kitchen.
You're seeing The Kitchen because it's on the schedule.
I don't care that it's on the schedule. I really am not going to put myself through that.
Alexis, help me out here.
You really don't have me on the schedule for anything in August until we do the D23 Comic-Con wrap-up, and then we're talking the banana splits. I don't have a voice in this.
Someone's reviewing The Kitchen with me. I don't care who at this point. Let's move on.
You can ask Jesse.
No, this is your podcast, fucko.
Yeah, that for some reason you schedule.
So then we got the Angry Birds movie on August 14th, which, that's going to be a Radulich family outing. It's going to be fantastic.
Are we reviewing that?
No.
What are we reviewing instead?
Nothing.
Just giving me the week off?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
This just makes no sense to me. You're making me review The Kitchen, but passing on the Angry Birds sequel.
Yeah, okay, because that week we're doing Swamp Thing stuff.
Oh, which also makes very little sense, but okay.
What?
Swamp Thing. He doesn't make any sense. He's like Chewbacca.
We're doing The Kitchen. It's a comic book from DC. We're doing it. Stop arguing with me. It's in your contract. Read it. Now listen.
You have not sent me my contract to sign.
That's your
For the
problem.
record, are we reviewing Ready or Not?
What the fuck is Ready or Not?
It's a comedic horror film. You've probably seen trailers for it. This woman gets married to this upper crust family, but after
Oh,
the wedding,
that! The one where they're trying to kill the bride.
Yeah.
No.
Mark does not like horror.
I mean, I'm not reviewing it. You guys can do whatever you want. Yeah.
I mean, if it didn't have Adam Brody in it, I might be tempted.
So the point of talking about all that is Lion King's got a couple of weeks here with very minimal competition. So again, it's already halfway to $1 billion. I don't think it gets as far as $2 billion, but I think it comfortably makes $1 billion. That's really all I have for the money. Anything else?
If it drops, unless it drops like 60% next week, it's making $1 billion.
This movie was made solely to make money. This is not a film that was made because there was a story to tell or there was passion behind it. This is a movie that was made because somebody said, "Hey, let's check it out. We can do this."
No, yeah, they have a list of Disney movies that they can repurpose. This was on the list. This is just the next one on the list. I would say I would actually tell you the one I'm looking forward to the most out of a lot of these projects is Mulan, just because they're probably going to do the most interesting stuff with that one, since it's not going to be a musical, therefore not a shot for shot remake.
They just announced another one they're adding. I don't know if this technically counts as a live action remake or not, but apparently they're going to redo James and the Giant Peach.
You know, I could live with that. I actually don't.
I want to actually, with what they could do with the CGI with the bugs, I think it could be good.
Yeah, I'm much like you. I have read a lot of Roald Dahl, and I do deeply enjoy his work. It's one of the reasons I can't stand Tim Burton's take on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's my least favorite movie featuring Christopher Lee.
I would rather them do a mashup of James and the Giant Peach and the Iron Giant, and have the Iron Giant fight the Giant Peach.
No, Mark, that's not how any of that works.
Grab, squish, victory.
You know they're doing a remake of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes?
Yes, I saw that.
I showed that to my father-in-law. He almost threw my phone into his pool. And on that note...
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
The wrong fucking button. God damn it. All right, anyway. This is...
Holy crap. I agree with Scott Mendelson. I hate my life.
We're not there yet. This is going to be a mix of rotten and fresh, by the way.
I know. I just saw Mendelssohn's. I'm like, you're right, and I hate myself for agreeing with you because I hate you so much. But when you're right, I can't complain about you. I can't condemn you not being correct when you are correct.
Anthony Lane of New Yorker, top critic. Rarely has brand recognition soared to such fetishistic heights, and I regret to inform you that, aside from the updating of the vocal cast, the most blatant discrepancy between the old and the new is a very slight increase in the comedy of flatulence.
Wow. How did you construct that sentence?
I was going to say that's just dripping with pretentiousness.
Yeah, well, that's Anthony Lane. Anthony Lane is mostly pretentiousness, just like the living embodiment of it.
Yeah, he is. Insert Bender joke. He's 40% pretension at any given point in time. I was very blessed to have my AP European history teacher who drilled into my head that I use too many words. If I'm going to have an expansive vocabulary, and I try very hard to, it's not so that I can drown people in the number of big words, I know. It's to choose the appropriate word for the appropriate circumstance. You'd badly need an editor, buddy, because...
I mean, was that really just his way of saying fart joke?
Yes.
Speaking of fart...
Okay, for the record, yeah, I was a little annoyed that they included... Obviously, Pumbaa's always been a gassy character, but it's like, do we really actually have to hear the farts?
Pumbaa's a real gas. Andrew,
Glad you amuse yourself, Mark.
all the time and twice on Sundays. Adam Graham of Detroit News, top critic. It's a remake with a roar. Grrr.
That was a purr, not a roar.
A, that's a purr. B, this guy took money from Disney. Just write a positive review. Because that is not... Look, whatever positive you want to say about this movie, and there are positives, that's not one of them.
No, that's a quote that gets put on the box.
Yeah.
Speaking of quotes on boxes, Jack Bottomley of Starburst. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming it's not the candy. It may not be a problem-free philosophy, Robert Winfree, but it won't stop you from feeling the love tonight for this spectacle a quarter of a century on.
Again, you're a shameless hack.
I'm going to say again, what?
Boy, if I can just insert the title of songs into my review, people will read it, and I'll be a real writer. Ugh.
Some of these reviews, it gets annoying because it's clear they're trying to either sound smarter than me, and I'm starting to go, okay, I'm not a stupid person, so if you're making me feel stupid, then you're just being an ass.
Kent Garrison of Mad About Movies podcast. He's mad, mind you. Just about every choice Favreau made as director was the wrong choice. And his insistence on 100% realism in a film in which the animals talk, sing, and do choreography makes my head hurt.
Okay, the fact that your brain just can't comprehend the uncanny valley is not my problem, buddy. Your point, look, the substance of your point that this is badly directed is correct, but the specifics that you cite actually don't necessarily support your conclusions. So I don't know what to tell you.
I still say this film was taken mostly out of Favreau's hands. This seemed like a Disney board meeting squeezed out.
With no pants on.
Sure, Mark, no pants on.
Look, we all know pants are the devil. Fair enough.
Nobody wears pants in the boardroom. Owen Butler, Film Inquiry. It's a surprisingly efficient remake.
No.
That acts as both a touching tribute to its predecessor and a breathtaking standalone epic in its own right.
No.
Wrong on all 3 points, sir. Demonstrably wrong. This isn't... Somehow, the movie that tries to be photorealistic in its depiction of various African landscapes comes across as less majestic and epic than 2D hand-drawn renderings of the same.
You can just look at the opening sunrise for that. The opening sunrise in the animated version was glorious and gorgeous. This one, it literally looks like somebody just filmed a sunrise somewhere in Africa and hit the play button on the CD player.
Tori Preston of Pajiba. A good movie is a good movie. Tori.
No, what's this? Pajiba?
Pajiba. Pajiba. Hakuna Matata. I don't know. Pajiba. 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 Fajita.
Kind of depends on where it's from in the world, how that would be pronounced, but your pronunciation is perfectly acceptable in the dark. By which I mean absent further knowledge.
A good movie is a good movie, and in no way, a good movie is a good movie, and this in no way replaces or diminishes the original. Instead, it gives you everything you loved and then a little extra on top, like a hooker.
No, she's not wrong. I'm sorry. This was a female reviewer, right?
I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah, she's not wrong.
You have a 50% chance of being right.
she's not wrong that this doesn't diminish the original. So, I really hate the argument, this ruins my childhood. No, it doesn't. The original Lion King is still there. It's still timeless. And if you doubt it, I'm going to go play the Super Nintendo game and try to figure out the right combination of roaring at the monkeys.
Hey, have you seen the speed run for that game?
I don't think I have enough anti-stress medicine to do that.
No, just look up a video of the speed run of a speed run of that game. It's pretty impressive.
Actually, for the record, the part that made me rage quit that game wasn't the monkeys and it wasn't the ostrich. It was the goddamn waterfall.
Emily Asher Perrin of Tor.com. In effect, watching The Lion King now feels more like watching a nature documentary. Have fun, guys.
I mean, wow. What a comment. Was your name Wishy or Washy?
I would have rather watched a nature documentary than watch this.
I mean, if they were going to do photorealism, maybe they should have just nixed the talking animals and just had David Attenborough narrate.
Ian Thomas Malone of Ian Thomas Malone.
You self-employed loser.
The Lion King overhunts the terrain of its predecessor. A lifeless remake that inhabits the Shadowlands of nostalgia.
Nostalgia is not the Shadowlands. Nostalgia is actually a really interesting word when you break down its roots, and a very interesting sensation within the human experience. I wouldn't even say this overhunts. It's just not very well done. There's a significant difference. If anything, this movie is overwritten. I mean, there's a couple of different scenes where they give Scar more dialogue that is utterly unnecessary. I mean, specifically, like when he's blaming Simba for what happened to Mufasa. He talks too much in this one. There's a lot more kind of subtlety and understatedness to what Jeremy Irons does in the original. Okay.
I want to end with this one, but right underneath him is Matt Brunson of Creative Loafing. But we have to talk about this because this is the best. This makes me glad we did this tonight. Og's Cruise of Rappler. In a market full of unnecessarily expensive things like Supreme branded red bricks and Jesus-shaped Cheetos, Jon Favreau's The Lion King is king.
Jesus-shaped Cheetos.
Okay, you are just a person. Look, I'm a bit of a malcontent, okay, so I know my own. You are that guy, sir. You are that guy who hates everything. And the only things you like, you stop liking the instant another human being becomes aware of their existence. You hipster jackass.
Matt Brunson of Creative Loafing.
The only music I like is the screaming of goats in the key of C sharp recorded through a tin can onto a gramophone. And you've never heard of it, so don't pretend that you have.
Matt Brunson of Creative
Feel
Loafing.
better.
No, he doesn't. All filmmakers would find it a compliment to have their latest picture compared to Alfred Hitchcock's excellent Psycho. Yet none would care to have their new movie compared to Gus Van Sant's execrable Psycho.
Actually, that's a really good point because that's one of the main things a lot of people have been commenting on. Is that it's same argument. It's like, why are you going to make something if you're just going to stick to the exact same formula?
It's kind of a shame because I think Vince Vaughn could have actually pulled off the character.
I liked Vince Vaughn in it. I had nothing against the actors in it. They all did a good job. It's just, again, shot-for-shot remake. Why?
And what are you going to do? You can't. If you're going to do shot-for-shot, you're not going to improve on perfection.
So Susan Granger liked it. We can all rest easy tonight.
That particular sign of the apocalypse has not yet come to pass where I agree with Susan Granger.
Vivid and nostalgic. The astonishing photo animation makes the classic fable look as if it's live action, an eye-popping continuation of The Circle of Life. 9 out of 10.
Yeah, no. You are very clearly distracted by the shiny things.
Even Eddie yawned at that. Good boy.
Good on you, Eddie.
All right. Oh, Michael Medved. Here we go.
Oh, no.
Oh, he liked it too.
Why?
Michael Medved of the Michael Medved Show. You can't argue with the visual grandeur of this film, which is just dazzling. It's a little weird to see animals looking like a nature documentary, fucking Christ, suddenly start talking to each other and singing. Did they know what they were going to see when they saw it?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know why all these people went, oh, wow, this looks gorgeous, and just ignored everything else about the movie.
Because they're trying to jump onto the same bandwagon that we did in the first 10 minutes where we had to say, okay, the movie's gorgeous. Are we all clear on this before we moved on?
One of my favorite reviewers, Rashid Irani of the Hindustan Times.
I always wonder how much of her reviews are just badly translated because they make no sense.
This is the person, Alexis, who I started reading them because he won the award for Trumpiest review of the year last year.
Oh, that moron.
Okay.
Not a joke.
Yeah, yep. Overall,
there were a series of reviewers who just decided that every movie being made had to be about Trump.
Yeah.
And if they could not actively be construed to be attacking Donald Trump's presidency, then these were bad movies.
And
how dare you change the story of the founding of McDonald's so that the little guy doesn't get squashed by the vicious entrepreneur businessman? We demand that Trump... shut up.
True story, by the way, about the Michael Keaton McDonald's movie. All right, so Rashid Irani of the Hindustan Times. Overall, while the plot offers nothing new, honestly, how could it? This re-envisioning of The Lion King is a wondrous treat that merits comparison with the golden age of screen animation.
No. It doesn't. The only way it's compared to the golden age of screen animation is negatively, because all of the charm that is brought to life by the vocal performances is gone. The dialogue is overwritten in places, completely cut out in others. And despite it being photorealistically beautiful, it somehow lacks color pop. There's a color saturation issue.
The only thing in that movie that I actually felt was enjoyable, honestly, the new cover of The Lion Sleeps Tonight.
That was pretty good. That was a great move. That was a great sequence when all the other animals start kicking in and they're prancing along in time.
Yeah, that was I actually enjoyed it. It's like, okay, if you're going to do something, at least that's fun.
Fred Topple of Monsters and Critics. The disappointment of The Lion King bodes poorly for live-action remakes of the Aristocats and Rescuers Down Under. Maybe Andy Serkis can do The Lion King with actors actually performing motion capture for the animals. That'll be better.
Okay, two things. This is going to make $1 billion. You know nothing. All right, look. I take serious artistic issue with this. Let's not pretend that financial returns aren't a thing, eh? Second, no, it's not really going to factor into that. On the other hand, if Andy Serkis gets more work, I'm all for it.
Did you see his take on the Jungle Book that aired on Netflix?
I've been meaning to watch it because I like Serkis so much, but I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet.
Really good. I was impressed with how much they actually stuck to the original story. Even making Shere Khan a lame tiger. It was a nice touch.
Yeah, I was just deeply pissed at the end of Disney's Jungle Book when Mowgli didn't go back to the human civilization. Like, that's such an important point of elements of that story, and they just, he gets to pal around in the jungle so we can make a sequel.
Yep. Sequel bait!
Also, since he brought up a potential live-action Rescuers Down Under remake, I don't know who you would get to play McLeach.
All right, I'm going to read these two together because they're both from Kaplan versus Kaplan. Gene Kaplan and David Kaplan.
Okay.
The Lion King is a fantastic family entertainment on a majestic scope. Favreau's The Lion King is still undeniably solid entertainment. Ka-ching!
No. Yeah, congratulations. You're going to get on the DVD box until that technology becomes utterly obsolete. You know, I genuinely wonder when they stop making physical copies of these things, How many of these critics are still going to do these stupid one-liners that are designed to be placed prominently on on some kind of marketing material?
All right, last one, just because I love it. I love this. This is fantastic. Anne Brodel, of What She Said. Okay?
Ugh.
Here's what she said.
Haven't we done that? We've done that site before. I don't think we've done her.
Danny Glover, James Earl Jones, Baron Mordor, Alfred
Okay.
Woodard.
Donald Glover, not Danny Glover.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, wait, did she actually get the name
She
wrong?
wrote Danny Glover.
You suck at your job.
Danny Glover, James Earl Jones, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Alfred Woodard, Jesus Christ, Chance the Rapper, Billy Eichner lead a terrific voice cast.
No. I mean, look, two things about this. One, it's not terrific. Two, congratulations on the one thing you were trying to do, which was get the call sheet right. You failed.
3, Chance the Rapper was in this?
Yes, he was one of the hyenas, I think. No, he was something else. I don't remember what though.
Hang on, what's his real name?
Chance the Rapper.
That's not his real name.
He was
Hang on, I'll IMDb it.
He was born Chance the Rapper.
He was absolutely not born. You know what? I'd love to say he was. There's no way he was born Chance the Rapper. But I actually, given the stupidity of naming conventions going on at the moment, I can't guarantee that.
No,
He is
you
a
can't.
Bush baby.
He's an I. It was one of the eyes in the. Okay, he's barely in this. He does not merit your inclusion in that list. Shame on you.
Yeah, he's one of the animals in the jungle with Timon and Pumbaa. I think he has maybe 3 lines.
If that.
All right, next week, folks, we've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on Damn You Hollywood. In the meantime, yesterday was Cloak and Dagger, Shades of Grey with myself and Jesse, a very short podcast. Tomorrow, Robert Winfree is back on the Metal Hammer of Doom. We will be reviewing Sabaton, The Great War.
I need to listen to that.
Jesse and I will be reviewing Cloak and Dagger Season 2 on Thursday. And assuming Jesse and... oh, shit, I can't do this on Friday. So I committed to doing a watch-along for Game Changer Wrestling that I can't do because I'll be at the movies. Oops.
No, nothing of value will be lost.
Nothing of value will be lost. Pennyworth on Epic starts this Sunday. Everyone should watch it. I want to plug that show.
Don't. Just don't.
Next week, myself, Alexis Hejna, Ronnie Adams, and Jesse will pitch Robert Winfree 4 DC meets Hanna-Barbera books. And I have the best one, and I'll win. So tune into that.
I sincerely doubt that's what happens, Mark. You've given me a preview of your pitch, and unless you are lying to me about it, no.
Just think.
Enjoy the invasion of the Kalians.
Just think Huckleberry Hound, David Simon, The Wire. Perfect. The aforementioned.
I was so gay that I couldn't tell anyone. Don't worry, baby. Omar still loves you.
Perfect. The aforementioned Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Possibly a extra review of the Muppet movie as we're like at the 40th anniversary of that, depending on if I can sit my kids down long enough to review it. Possibly Alexis Hejna if I can sit her long enough down to review it. One never knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men. Next Wednesday is L7, Scatter the Rats. And I will be digging Sean Comer out from a bunker deep underground to do an on-trial for Jackie Brown by Quentin Tarantino. A week after that, we'll be doing Hobbs and Shaw right here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Then Robert Winfree can't wait to talk about another Melissa McCarthy movie titled The Kitchen, which is based on a DC comic. He can't
Not
wait.
a joke. I am probably not going to see that movie. I will find something else. Mark will talk about The Kitchen. I will laugh at him, and then I will talk about whatever I saw.
So tune in to hear Robert Winfree gush over Melissa McCarthy's acting in The Kitchen.
Absolutely will. Look, no joke. She's not a good actress.
We'll also be doing a TV party for Orange is the New Black. We'll be doing Patsy Walker, a.k.a. Hellcat, Hooked on a Feline on source material. And finally, we'll be reviewing the new Volbeat August 7th. So check out all of those tings when tings happen. Speaking of tings, big tings, Alexis Hejna. Tell us about your big tings.
I hate that you resurrected that, Mark. I really, really do.
My big tings? You don't want to talk about my big tings?
Look, unless you're actually talking about tines, which is the technical term for the individual spindles.
Oh my
on a
God,
fork.
I don't care. Go ahead.
Ah, gotcha.
Really, I'm just having fun listening to you two threaten each other.
That's kind of this podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back going, oh, please. I got a front row ticket to the bloodlust here. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic. At the end of this month, we are going to be appearing at the Kansas City Nerdlesque Festival. That is the Kansas City Nerd Burlesque event. Yes,
She'll be providing me with a blow-by-blow account of all the burlesqueness.
You're going to be really disappointed that I'm not going to be surrounded by women in revealing clothing all weekend.
I don't
I'm probably
care.
just going to be sitting next.
I don't care what you're surrounded
next
by.
to another vendor selling something. I don't know. But no, this is our first time doing this event. We are unveiling some new pieces, including our new Scrabble Tile ribbon chokers. Really excited to get working on those and get them out there. As always, you can find us on our stores on Handmade at Amazon and Etsy. And we're always on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're on Twitter under protest. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic.
All right, Robert Winfree, tell everyone
Especially
about
with the new look of Twitter. Definitely protest.
All right, Robert Winfree, tell everyone where they can find your big tings.
I have none. Consequently, you cannot find them.
Aw.
Sundays, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, or if you're a fan of the sport of mixed martial arts, tune in. It's mostly UFC-centric. I occasionally bash Bellator for being terrible and talk on it. I talk boxing on occasion. I wish it were more generalized combat sports, but I don't necessarily have the personal expertise to get that far into some of the other ones, so I do what I can. This week is a review of UFC on ESPN 3, 4, one of those. Not a good night. Not a good night. Good main event, but subtle. And subtle doesn't necessarily go over well with MMA fans. There's also a preview for UFC 240, which will be coming your way on Saturday, and will feature a main event where a Hawaiian murders someone from New Jersey. Max Holloway will be defending the featherweight title against Frankie Edgar. I hate to count out Frankie Edgar because you shouldn't, but I don't hold out much expectation for his victory here, assuming Max Holloway does not badly injure himself or have a terrible, terrible weight cut. And next week we'll have a review of that episode and a preview of UFC on ESPN 5, I'm pretty sure, when Colby Covington and Robbie Lawler will fight for sort of position in the welterweight division if Kamaru Usman's ever going to actually defend the belt. I joke, he won it only earlier this year, and he's not reached a point in his career, in his title reign where I go, get off, defend or vacate kind of thing. So be on the lookout for that. Again, if you're into the sport of mixed martial arts, tune in, have some fun. Mark already mentioned I'll be appearing on a source material next week, I think, and we'll be just talking about DC Hanna-Barbera, and yeah, making jokes, mostly. Frequently at Mark's expense, also at Jesse's. Occasionally at Ronnie Adams, when we make him cry.
All right, folks.
And then, again, I will be reviewing... I'm on the Metal Hammer of Doom tomorrow, so I have an album I have to listen to talking about Sabaton, which is fine. I like Sabaton. And then we are back here next week for a Tarantino movie. Something I don't have to contemplate slitting my wrist to get out of. Yay!
But then just after that, it'll be Hobbs and Shaw, then The Kitchen, so fuck you. All right, speaking of fuck you...
Look, hang on. I know what I'm getting into with Hobbs and Shaw. I'm the one who actually said this meets all of our criteria. Why didn't you put it on the schedule? And you went, because I don't want to see it. And I said, but it meets all the criteria, and you've thrown that particular gauntlet in my face enough times. You went, fine, I'll put it on. The trailer started coming out, and I realized that I made a terrible mistake with my life. So I'm fine getting into that one. I know what I'm in for. Although I fully expect to walk out of it when Roman Reigns comes on screen.
Terrific. All right, folks, for Alexis Hejna, for Robert Winfree, who's still alive despite all odds, this has been Damn You Hollywood. Be well, be safe, and behave.